Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Needlepoint TV. It's great to be with you here again. And I just welcome you to our YouTube channel for Serendipity Needleworks. I'm Ellen Johnson, and I'm going to be your host today. So the topic of today's chat is all about decorative stitches. What is a decorative stitch? I know that you hear terms used interchangeably. You hear some people call fancy stitches just exactly that, fancy stitches. Sometimes you hear people call them decorative stitches. Sometimes you hear people call adding specialty touches to your canvases, embellishing your canvases. And then you also hear decorative stitches referred to as canvas embroidery stitches. So all kinds of different ways to describe transforming a two-dimensional painted canvas into a three-dimensional piece of fiber art. So there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of canvas embroidery stitches, which is, by the way, the technical term for what they are. And really, your imagination is your only limitation as to how you apply those on needlepoint canvas. So I have an example here. This is a canvas that it's a Pepperberry Designs canvas, and I used it I added fancy stitches to this to make it more dimensional, three-dimensional. And I also used a variety of different threads on this canvas to really make it pop. And that's really what we're doing when we're talking about taking the fancy stitches and threads and adding them to the canvas to really bring it to life, to make it more three-dimensional. So I want to go, since we're doing this live, I want to make sure that I do welcome everybody in case you're just now joining us. We're chatting a little bit today about using decorative stitches on your needlepoint canvases and just exactly what is a decorative stitch. So I would love to know in the chat if you would tell me, or down below the video if you're watching this as a recording, I would love to know if you've used decorative stitches on your canvases before, because it's always great for me to get some feedback on who's watching. And so yeah, okay, so I see we've got some people that are here with us on YouTube and some people also on Facebook. So let me go and make sure that I can see all of the comments. So there we go. All right. So I started using decorative stitches on my canvases probably, geez, I would say 20-ish years ago. And really, it just started very, very simply. There are some super easy stitches that you can use on your canvases, and they can also get very complex very quickly. So your basic stitches, straight stitches, slanted stitches, stitches can be categorized into 5 different families or classifications. So you have your straight stitches, and you have your crossed stitches, you have your tied stitches, woven stitches, and knotted stitches. So stitches fall into one of those 5 families. And then aside from that, if you end up putting 2 different kinds of stitches together, say maybe one stitch from one family and another stitch from another family together to create a pattern, then that's what we call a composite stitch. So, or some people call it combination stitch. So there's really, I guess you'd say there's really 6 families, but you've got the 5 main ones and then everything else that just kind of falls into that other one. So an example of that would be the crisscross Hungarian stitch. The crisscross Hungarian stitch, let me pull up. I'm gonna try to do this. Y'all bear with me while I hop over here and check out. I should have had this pulled up already. Hold on. I clicked on the wrong box inside the Stitchers Club membership. So I want to show you a picture of what the crisscross Hungarian stitch looks like, of what the diagram looks like, so you can see. Let me go down to the bottom of that page and then come over here and share my screen. Okay, it's been a little while since I've done this, so y'all hang tight. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to share my screen again, and here we go. All right. So you should be able to see my screen now and see the actual diagram for the crisscross Hungarian stitch. You can see that this is a combination stitch because it has a straight stitch, which is this component, and then it also has a crossed stitch. So you have your slanted straight stitches, and then you have your little cross stitch. So those two combined create a composite stitch. So that's what I'm talking about when I say a composite stitch. All right, so let me come back and all right, so let me see. We've got a couple of people who have shared some things. So I want to make sure. Bev says yes, she has used decorative stitches, loves using them. I do too. And let's see, only done a couple of simple decorative stitches, which is what I prefer, but would love to know about other simple decorative stitches. So yes, literally, like I said earlier, hundreds and hundreds of options. So what I can tell you just off the bat is that your straight stitches are typically going to be easier to use. So they're simpler. Anytime you start layering thread on top of itself, whether it be through what's considered a layered or a woven stitch, or if you do a crossed stitch, anytime you have multiple layers of thread stacked on top of each other, those can get a little bit, they can be a little more complicated. Your straight stitches are by far your simplest stitches. So if you're looking into maybe beginning to expand your stitch repertoire, that would be a great place to start. There are lots of different options in that regard. There's a great book called Stitches to Go. It's a really handy little book that you can pop in your project bag. The authors are Suzanne Howren and Beth Robertson. And inside this little book, there are literally more than, I want to say, close to, dare I say, 300 different stitches. I know that there are a bunch. Anyway, there are lots of stitches in this little book, and you can see that you have everything from, all right, here's your crossed rice stitch. This one is very complex, as opposed to, let me find, and I know it's, let me see if I can pop over to it really quickly. The mosaic stitch, which is this one right here, very simple to do. So in fact, mosaic stitch, I think mosaic stitch was the first decorative stitch or canvas embroidery stitch that I learned how to do. So it was either that or brick stitch. And honestly, I can't remember, but they're both very, very simple, and both would be really good choices if you've never tried to do a decorative stitch. Either one of those would be a great place to start. And so now we also have, let's see, Mary Lou said that she actually made her own jingle turning out using my stitch guide, and he turned out great. So I'm glad to hear that. So here is an example of, let me show you this. I want to pop back over and share again. A stitch diagram is actually what you use. Hang on, I can't do but one thing at a time. So let me go here. All right, there we go. So this is a stitch diagram. A stitch diagram is like a roadmap that you use to tell you where to go when you're doing a stitch pattern. So if I back up here, you can see that this is actually a two-step. There are two steps to doing this stitch pattern. So you start with your straight stitches, and the numbers tell you where to take your needle. So you can see that this one starts on the left side of the canvas. You could also start it on the right side of the canvas. It doesn't matter, but you just have to choose. And so you work the straight parts of the stitch pattern first, and then you come back and add in the little cross stitches in between the gaps that you leave when you're working the first part. So you can see this is where the little cross stitches will work or be worked into those little spaces there. So basically, like I said, a stitch diagram is like a roadmap for, it tells you where to actually start, where to put your needle, and where to take it to the back. So where to bring your needle up in the front and where to take it down to the back of the canvas. So it tells you where to go and what order to work in. Now you'll find some stitch diagrams don't have letters and numbers, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But the ones that I share have letters or numbers on them. So you can always know that if you are using a stitch guide or a stitch diagram that I've created, you're going to have that guidance there. And I know that Mary Lou also said that she had used a stitch guide. So a stitch guide is actually a collection of stitch diagrams and instructions that you can use to embellish a canvas to add that three-dimensionality, whether it be through movement or texture or any number of the principles of design, elements of art and principles of design. You can use that stitch guide as exactly what it sounds like. It's a stitch guide. It tells you what stitches to use, where to put them, what threads to use, what pairings to use. So it's like an instruction booklet on how to stitch a canvas. And this canvas actually was part of a retreat that I did a couple of years ago. We had a retreat here in Tuscaloosa, and it was so much fun. We had a great time stitching Jingle. Diane from Pepperberry Designs created Jingle just for us, and you can hear she really jingles. This finishing was done by Needleworks in Birmingham. My friend Judith Carter owns that workroom, and I think they did a really creative and clever job. It looks like a little gift bag. You can see when you turn it, it's got the gusset on the side, and she used ultra suede to finish it, which I love. And we've got all those cute little findings in the top, So anyway, it's a fun finish. All right. So let's see. We have someone at Vanessa says, how can stitching be done faster? Unfortunately, there's really not any way to speed things up. And I would challenge you to enjoy the process. I know it's always, you want to start a project, you want to get it finished and move on to the next thing. But when you look at it as an opportunity to express your own creativity, then you can sit back and enjoy the process rather than be project focused. Be process focused is what my encouragement is to everybody, because we're doing this not only to express our own unique creativity, but we're also doing it to to be able to the meditative qualities, for example, of needlepoint. I mean, it's tremendously, to me, tremendously meditative, especially when I'm doing some of the simpler stitches, or when I'm doing even a project that's all worked entirely in tent stitch, which is your standard needlepoint stitch. So great question, though. How can you speed things up? Really, I don't think in terms of speeding things up. I think in terms of, or my focus is more on enjoying the process. So, but if anybody has any tips for how to speed things along, please feel free to share those with us, because I'm sure there are other people who are curious about that as well. So, all right. So let me see. How do you read the guide when you have letters and numbers? So typically the way my stitch guides are written, I start, if you have a project like Jingle, for example, if you have a project like Jingle, I'll give you my suggestion on where to start on the canvas, what area to stitch first. And then once you've stitched that area, we move on to the next area. And if you're talking about the stitch diagram, then typically on mine, I do the numbers. I suggest that you do the numbered stitches first and then come back and fill in with the lettered stitches. Now, sometimes your stitch diagrams are very complex and you'll end up with multiple sets of numbers and letters, but those usually have instructions with them. So to keep it simple, though, start with the numbers. And some stitch diagrams only have numbers. They don't have letters. There's not a need for you to add a second layer to it. If it's just a one-step stitch diagram, then typically numbers are sufficient. But if you have two steps, as in the case of the crisscross Hungarian stitch, then you would do your numbers first and your letters second. So I hope that makes sense. All right. So I wanted to make sure that I showed you a couple of other examples of some different kinds of stitches that you can do. This will be just examples of stitches that I've done on a little sampler, and you can see, well, this is it right here. And I'm going to see, we're going to try this. I'm going to see if I can switch my camera. Now y'all hold tight and keep your fingers crossed for me that this is going to work, because I haven't tested this in a little while. So hold on. Let's see. I am going to switch my camera over here. Ooh, fingers crossed. Yay! Okay, so you can see we have here, let me move this up just a little bit. On this particular sampler, let me reach over here and get a laying tool so I can point. This is a stitch called the Nabucco stitch. this is your actual, this is your crisscross Hungarian stitch. So you can see the little cross stitches in there, and then this is also the slanted stitch components of the or they're actually, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but they're the straight of the pattern crossed stitch. This is a double brick stitch. So these are very stitches that you can use on your needlepoint can add extra depth and dimension to your project. And like I said, there are literally hundreds of them that you can use. So we're getting ready to do a fall stitch challenge. We've done challenges before. This one's going to have a little bit different twist to it. I'm really excited about this one. It starts on October the 18th, and I would love to have you join me. It's free. So what a stitch challenge is, we get together every day, 5 days, and I share with you a new stitch and some of the uses and some threads, different ideas for ways to use that stitch on your canvases. Now I'm going to go ahead and just share with you too, if you don't do much in the way of painted canvas needlepoint, you can still learn a lot from participating in one of these challenges, because there are so many designs available that are counted canvas needlepoint projects, and they're comprised of a variety of different combinations of fancy stitches that create beautiful geometric patterns. So I would encourage you, even if you don't do much in the way of painted canvas, to join us for the stitch challenge. So I'm going to put the link here in the chat. Hang on one second. I should have done this earlier too. You know, I'm telling you, I just dropped the ball on this one. So it is going to be happening, like I said, on October the 18th, starting on October the 18th, and it will last through October the 22nd. So 5 days. We're going to get together at 3 o'clock Central. So when you sign up to get to join me, again, it's free. So when you sign up to join me, then you'll get access to all the instructions on how to get yourself set up to get started. We have a materials list that we send, and then also just the basics that we'll share with you the Zoom link when we get closer, because this is actually going to be done on Zoom. I do it on Zoom so that it's easier. I know we have some people who are in our community who aren't on Facebook, and so I want to make sure always that that I'm able to, help everybody who would like to be a part. So let me go ahead and do that. There is your link. If you'd like to sign up, you can just type that in the URL on your computer or on your iPad or even your iPhone or whatever kind of device you're using or watching on, and that'll take you to the page where you can sign up. So I'd love to have you join me. Again, it's a 5-day challenge. We'll be learning a new stitch every day. And this one, again, has a little bit of a different twist to it. So, I would, again, encourage you to join me, whether you do much in the way of painted canvas, or even if you don't, you can always learn something new, and it's always fun to be a part of a community of people who love to stitch as much as you do. So we have a lot of fun on these get-togethers. So that's really it in a nutshell. I will share, there is I have a blog post over on the Serendipity Needleworks website that I would love for you to be able to take a peek at too, because it'll show you some of the samplers that people have created from previous stitch challenges that we've done. And I think you would really get a kick out of seeing those. So let me hop over here and share that blog post so that you can go over and take a look at it too. All right, so here we go. So this is actually, I was about halfway down the page. Let me scroll back up to the top. So here we have, it's called a scrapbook of stitch samplers. So you can see, if you go to our website, go to the blog page, if you just click on this, and on the home, the website is serendipityneedleworks.com, and then click on blog, and then you can come down here to find it. You can just type in samplers and then hit the search bar, and it'll take you over to that page where you can see some of the samplers that people have created from previous stitch challenges. So some really pretty stitch samplers, fun colors, all kinds of neat and interesting things to see there. So, all right. Well, we are going to wrap it up. I appreciate you being here with me today. Again, if you're watching this as a recording, make sure you let me know down in the chat below if you have used decorative stitches on canvases before, or if you just popped in and just found us, let me know that down underneath the video too. And if you are watching this on YouTube, of course, be sure and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done that. Just click the subscribe button or click the little bell, or do both. The little bell does let you know when I'm about to go live, and the subscribe button gets you an email whenever we're going to be doing a new video. So thanks ever so much for joining me. I hope you have a terrific rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you at the 2021 Fall Stitch Challenge. Until next time, happy stitching. Bye for now.